Well, welcome. This is the official work session for the City Council and the Planning Commission. We'll be discussing small cell technology and some 5G activity as that's starting to develop and grow throughout the country and around the world. But how's that going to play out here in Canby, and what kinds of things do we need to be discussing and planning for? And to take us through this menagerie of twists and turns will be one of our planners, Ryan Potter. So, Mr. Potter, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Hodson, City Councilors, Planning Commission members, and Chair Savory. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about 5G technology and small cells and managing our public right-of-way. So this is a topic that has been brought to the Planning Commission before, but the Planning Director wanted to create an opportunity for both the Planning Commission and the City Council to discuss it a little bit together since this is coming down the pike so quickly. So hopefully some of you were able to view the video that was linked in the packet. If not, it gave a brief overview about 5G and small cell technology. This is really a new technology that replaces 4G service that we're all using now. It's technology that will allow more data, better performance, faster download rates, and this is currently being rolled out all over the world and, of course, the country. So 4G service will require a new generation of devices, so phones and tablets will have to support this new technology. And also, it's meant to not just be the things we hold in our hand, but also elements of the built environment and transportation and cars. This is meant to set up the Internet of Things and smart cities where different pieces of our infrastructure and vehicles and everything else can wirelessly speak to one another. And communities are working with industry now to set up smart cities where this is where we can collect data in real time from a variety of pieces of our built environment. So in addition to new devices, we'll also need to build new infrastructure that will support this technology. So unlike our current cell phone technology that we're using, which is largely based on a handful of large cell towers spread around the region, this will be a denser network of small cells that allow for a denser network of connections that operate on smaller distances. So why is this a discussion for us in Canby right now? So for starters, the telecommunications industry is rapidly pursuing a rollout of this technology, so it's coming fast. They're investing billions of dollars of it, and cities and local governments in general are really kind of scrambling to have a network of regulation in place to address it. In relation to that, there's been federal laws that have been crafted to limit the scope of what local jurisdictions can do when they're regulating this technology, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But in general, the city has a vested interest in managing what's placed in our public realm and our city-owned right-of-way. So, of course, we manage other pieces of the infrastructure that are in our streets and along our sidewalks, and we obviously know citizens of Canby care about what the community looks like. So today we wanted to discuss some examples of code language from other communities in our area, and then collect your initial thoughts and maybe discuss some next steps for this process. So I mentioned that there's FCC legislation. This mostly came out in the last 2 years, and this was largely meant to streamline review of the 5G network. And so the industry has worked with the FCC on creating standards and regulations on the rollout of this technology. For starters, we can't ban 5G. We can't create unreasonable requirements that would effectively ban it from our community. And we can't have obstacles that kind of ban it in practice. We can't charge fees that are excessively burdensome compared to other types of infrastructure. And the FCC has established some shot clocks, which are time periods by which local governments have to review applications as they come in. So this is largely either 60 days or 90 days after the application for an installation comes in. And as you might suspect, that's not a long time. So we would like to have a regulatory system in place for when those applications start to come in. A lot of the concern in the public has been related to the potential health effects of technology in general and the rollout of 5G. But the FCC rulings have also addressed this, and these kind of go back to the mid-90s. And many of you will remember from our cell phone tower projects that we've seen, in that we are relatively limited in analyzing environmental effects of telecommunications facilities. So as long as the proposed installations are consistent with FCC guidelines, that pretty much preempts us from analyzing that part of the project. It really leaves us to managing distancing, the physical capacity of our right-of-ways, and aesthetic concerns. But if we don't have local regulations in place, there's really automatic approval of these installations, and that's why staff has really focused on addressing this sooner rather than later. So luckily, the state grants us some authority to manage our public realm, and that's what we plan to do. And like the cities around us, Canby would like to find a balance between regulating our right-of-way and what goes in it, and also complying with the federal laws that are in place. And like any other city, we would like to avoid legal challenges. So we want to create some robust regulation that is still consistent with the regulatory paradigm that we are forced to work within. It's a staff's opinion that we have one really good chance to tackle this up front. And the idea behind that is we don't want to put something in place and then tweak it over time because it creates a fairness issues. We don't want to apply one set of standards to the first batch of installation applications that we get, and then have the next batch go through different sets of regulations, and then we want to be legally defensible, so we want to get it right from the start. And city staff really want to utilize best practices and be, as we're proactive on this issue. So a big part of what we've been doing is researching communities around us that have already tackled this issue and come out with code language or resolutions. So as we've done some research, one of the best examples that we've found that we will be forwarding to the Planning Commission and City Council is Oregon City. Oregon City last year came out with some development standards for the management and deployment of 5G technology. And so just to summarize that really quickly, these are some of the reasons why we think Oregon City is a great example of what we might base our code amendments on. So they do a great job of defining major versus minor installations, and that relates to the time clocks on when we have to process them. They have restrictions on restoring the infrastructure. If they tear up the sidewalk, then they have to replace it how it was. There's restrictions on the number, the separation, the locations of where these installations might go. And planning staff like this because they include a priority list. So they prioritize locations that are along expressways, and then the next priority is arterials, and then collectors, and then on from there. And then if a carrier comes in with an application, the city is looking for them to utilize the higher level of public realm before they get closer to residential neighborhoods. So that's one of the reasons why we like their example. They also included a short prohibited list. For example, the municipal elevator in Oregon City feels that the 5G network could be built without them being built on this historic structure. That's something that we might consider. They have restrictions on signage, attachment limitations, so how everything's shrouded if it's on a pole. Also, they looked at noise. And then perhaps most importantly, or one of the most important things, is Oregon City changed and amended their right-of-way fees to reflect the costs of taking in these applications and processing them, but also making sure per FCC guidelines, those fees have to be in line with the fees that we would charge a different utility that would be putting something in our public right-of-way. So I'm going to summarize where we are right now and our next steps. So right now, we don't really have a decision that we're asking you to decide on. We're really trying to keep the Planning Commission and the City Council in the loop at these changes that are coming. And our hope was that we could have a quick initial discussion, both to share our general approach to crafting some code amendments, which would obviously be staff would like to see us manage our right-of-way in the ways that we can. And then we'd also like to get some input from both decision-making bodies on our direction for drafting an ordinance that we would look to adopt, and whether that's special concerns that you have about aesthetics or the spacing or anything else that you would like city staff to research as we look at updating our code. And so the next step is we will be sending you the Oregon City example and perhaps other examples for you to look at, and then give city staff some feedback on how appropriate you think that is as an example for Canby. And then in the near future, we'll be looking to craft some code language that will ultimately adopt for when these installations start to come in the door. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. We have the city attorney is here, and the both of us can answer any questions that you might have.
Great, Ryan. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Generally how I run these on Zoom for the Planning Commission group, if you've got a question, I know we've got a few people that are not on Viewfinder here, but if you've got a question, don't hesitate to throw it up raise your hand in the chat, or raise your hand as Councilor Parker is doing so elegantly to get my attention, and we will I'll make my move around the photographs here in front of me. So Councilor Parker, since you had your hand up, you go right ahead, sir.
Well, of course, I'm going to defer to Council President Dale on the meaning of this. What does this mean? But to the issue at hand, what I would like to offer is my suggestion. You come up with this idea of doing it one time and doing it right. It's a wonderful concept, and I'd like us to try that. And the one thing I would suggest to you is that we engineer this so that there is the least amount of staff time and hassle and handling paperwork and that sort of thing. That if we're going to design this the first time in 2020, let's have it an online sort of thing that we're not going to have to change. If we're locked in by the FCC on what we can do, I am more interested in finding a way for us to process this type of information, protect whatever it is we are allowed to protect. Safety and health doesn't seem to be one of them. Aesthetics is the other. So that would be my suggestion: is let's engineer a process that is the least amount of administrative time. The other is, I'm fine with whatever Oregon City comes up with. They've got more historic buildings and concerns than we do. So my guess is they've already taken a look at this in terms of things. Obviously we don't want to put it on top of the train museum or things like that. But otherwise, I'm not real worked up about this thing. I didn't wear my aluminum hat tonight. I'm not sure if anybody else did, but I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Hodson, Mayor, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
This is an historic event, second time that Greg and I have agreed almost wholeheartedly on something. But I would like to add, my concern is how we're going to get all this information out to the citizens of Canby. I mean, that's an element that we're not considering, and they're going to have concerns. And if we don't keep them in the loop as well, then you're going to have some real problems. They can come to the Planning Commission, but we'll just defer to you guys, and they can put things at you. But I am concerned that we are not that the public is largely uninformed about what's going on. I think it should be an ongoing process about this, because most people don't know what 5G entails. They don't know what that means in terms of the aesthetics as well as privacy issues down the road. So because 5G, from what we had in our Planning Commission meeting a little while back, is, it's 4G on steroids. And so they need to be, the public needs to be brought in on this, or else they're going to be hurtling into the future with no parachute. That's right. Because we have no wiggle room on anything else. We just have to prepare our citizens for the future.
Yeah, Chair Savory, I agree with that. I mean, the communication piece is huge, and I know that in the past, I'm not sure about for all of you on the Planning Commission, but I know that we have had a series of emails as well as visitors to City Council meetings expressing concern about the expansion of 5G and what that means, and health concerns, and again, echoing much of the things that you had said, Mr. Savory. So, yeah, I think the communication with the community will be important. The challenge, as we read through the information and as we hear all these things, is we don't have a lot of latitude. According to the FCC, it's pretty much something that's going to happen. We just have to be able to figure out how to manage it as best we can, as Ryan was explaining to it. So, Michael, you have a question or comment?
I do have a certain issue just as an electrician. The latest iteration of the National Electrical Code mandated that obsolete equipment has to be removed, including the wiring that supplies it. This is just the latest iteration of technology, and everyone's really concerned about it going in and rushing that as best they can, no matter how we feel about it. But the law is that once that stuff is obsolete, it has to go. And this is going to be a lot of equipment very down close to us, and it's going to be in our face. Some of the things I've learned about the science of it is that even rain and leaves can block the signal of the highest density. And so we're going to be looking at a lot of things, and I'm not sure how much shrouding is going to be possible. There may be some material that's transparent to these waves, I'm not sure, but I'm expecting that there's going to be a lot of this stuff, and I just assume that the city of Canby wasn't responsible for the removal of it once it's obsolete. I don't know how you could do that with companies can go bankrupt or something, so there may be some sort of bond that would be required just to pay for the removal of the equipment, in the event of some kind of irregularity in the business. The telecommunication business is kind of agile, and businesses merge and disappear with regularity.
Michael, thank you for that. This is, it's an interesting piece. So since that I've been on the council and been mayor, as we've cycled through Canby and its growth patterns and the things that have gone on, and how the city council seems to, at certain times, and the planning commission have the ability to bring on, or people get appointed to the council or the planning commission with certain backgrounds that seem to come in handy with major topics, and this being one of them. And Michael being an electrician, Derek working in the field that he works in, Tim, and a lot of his background as well. I would definitely think that we're going to have a lot of great conversation around how this could play out. And so, Michael, to your point, that is not something that I was aware of in terms of the obsolete piece, and that might be something, Ryan, that we might need to get some background on. And how does that play into our guidelines as we move forward? Is that something that you've seen already in reading that?
I don't recall if I've seen that particular item, but that's definitely something that we'll look at as we explore the different examples that we see.
This is Joe as well. These also, our take on this, legally speaking, has been that we also still govern the rights of way with franchise. And all of our franchise agreements, when there's facilities that are put in by a franchisee, they are responsible for the removal of those by contract.
Okay. Thank you for that, Joe. Councilor Parker?
Well, I am thrilled to have Mike on board with his expertise, and just as sure as that we've got 5G, we're going to have 6G. And I don't want a bunch of Wang computers on top of our telephone poles 2 years from now that some corporation that has been dissolved isn't going to be responsible for it. So I don't know if there is a way to build into that. But Mike, you're right, that at some point 5G will be obsolete. And it may not look anything like what 5G is going into. And so who will be responsible for those things on top of wherever they're going to be put? So, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Derek, I'm going to put you on the spot, and if this is not something that you are familiar with, if I'm coming totally, obviously I'm coming from a very novice standpoint on this question, but to Councilor Parker's point and to Michael's point, if companies go obsolete, when they go obsolete or out of business or they get acquired, the new company would then take on the responsibility of said equipment and those contracts, correct?
Yeah, if they get acquired, definitely that would happen. If they go out of business and it's abandoned, there is provisions in that from an abandonment standpoint that we can also go back to those individuals. And of course, I don't know what kind of recourse you have if they have no money to try to get that stuff removed. But yeah, I mean, it's very true that the wireless technology in general it moves very fast. That industry moves a lot faster than any other industry, and so those things are something definitely to be concerned about, and we should have some provisions in there for removal.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Other questions for Ryan or comments? Council President Dale?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with modeling after Oregon City for all the reasons already cited. I'm a big fan of leveraging what others do. Remember, as we learned in college, it's only plagiarism if you don't give credit. So, Joe, I wanted to make sure that we're clear on this because this goes to Chair Savory's point on community education. Are we unable to say no?
No to what?
Can we deny 5G installation permits?
No.
Okay.
But the FCC ruling back September of 2018 makes clear that political subdivisions, localities are not to impede the progress of 5G.
Okay. So in spite of other cities in the Bay Area doing so, that's a no-go, right?
It's a surefire way of making yourself a test case.
Yeah, which we're trying to avoid usually.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to echo, I think the education part is important. We'll need to make it clear that we are unable to say no. So you are welcome to exercise your First Amendment right in council all you want, but we do need to make it clear that we cannot say no. On the other hand, we do not have to endorse or warrant the safety of the technology, right? It is there. So a question for Ryan and maybe Joe. What's a game changer on 5G is the density of deployments. And so successful 5G networks also need to be deployed on private property, commercial buildings, even into residences and neighborhoods. What guidance, what can we do to get our hands around that?
This is Ryan. The examples that I've seen largely focus on the public realm. So I'm not sure, maybe Joe can elaborate, but I'm not sure the code language that we're looking at would address the private realm.
Well, in a sense, we could put aesthetics into our code in a way that at least would offer guidance to staff when people try to do something and they still have to come through planning to do it. Otherwise, yeah, our franchises are for governing our rights-of-way only, and so what we're hopeful of is putting this in as a standard for planning under the planning code, and then also having franchises work in tandem with that. So we're kind of double covered that way, but then hopefully this aesthetically we're allowed to at least have a say when somebody tries to attach it to something. The aesthetics will be spoken for a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was poking at. Derek can comment on, whether the density of Canby is enough for it to be much of an issue. But at some point, folks will want to put 5G on private commercial buildings. It will want to go into neighborhoods because that's the key to its success, is getting coverage everywhere.
Yeah. So just to add to that, the density part is because of the frequency that's being used, in the 28 gigahertz and up, which was the first deployment of 5G, requires very short distances. And Mike was definitely right on the button there when it comes to how it propagates. It does not propagate through buildings. It does not propagate through trees. Rain fade is something that affects it as well. The reason why that's a good frequency is because it does a lot of bandwidth. So the higher in the frequency you go, the more bandwidth you can do and the higher speeds that you can do. But the less it will propagate. So that's why you have to have that small cell deployment. So they will be looking to go on buildings. They'll be looking to go anywhere where they can get private agreements to do that. So having a good code that talks about the aesthetics of it to make sure that they're just not everywhere hanging off is something that should definitely be a part of our discussions. One thing to add too is to think about the infrastructure. So I know we can't segregate the infrastructure to specifics, but keep in mind that also requires a lot more fiber to be in the ground if somebody's going to come and build it themselves. So Wave and Canby, or Wave and Direct Link, have both done a good job at putting infrastructure into the ground. And if they don't utilize that infrastructure, which is their right to do that, that also means quite a bit of construction to put all that infrastructure in there. So to be able to handle those small cells, it requires a fiber connection to each one of those small cells to be able to do that. So just keep that in mind when writing the code as far as the permitting process goes, those kind of things. It's quite a bit of infrastructure that has to go into the ground.
Mayor Hodson, I can't wave.
I'll do Greg first, and then I'll come to you, Jennifer.
Okay.
Oh, actually, Greg's waving off now, so Jennifer, you're up.
Okay. My understanding was also that they need to have power coming to all of those stations, and that Canby Utility doesn't allow anybody to piggyback on their poles. Is that still an issue and correct or not?
I could say. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. That is my understanding of their, the last time we had a conversation about this. I don't know if there's a blanket, no from them, although if PGE also has issues, I think, and so it's going to be a challenge, but it's a challenge for the companies that are coming in, because they're going to try to find the best spots, and the first people to come in are going to look for the very best spots and try to create their little web. But they come in usually one company at a time. So a good example would be like if you're a Verizon customer, if Verizon comes in, only Verizon customers will benefit, and they'll try to find the very best spots for themselves first. So that's more of a question of their problem, not ours, if Canby Utility doesn't want to do business with them.
Well, then can we, on the aesthetic side of things, the idea of having, 16 poles down the street when they could all be on one, is there a way to cluster them or use that as a part of the aesthetics to not impede the process of putting in this new system, but to have it where it's at least controlled a bit? And also, on the other side of things, since people will be coming into public hearings, can we have maybe a blanket statement whenever we're going to have someone come in and say, we would love to hear your concerns, but we cannot decide anything on these factors. So if you have a concern beyond that, then we'd love to hear from you, because otherwise I could see it being 5 minutes after 5 minutes after 5 minutes of people coming in and talking and expressing their concerns on things that we have no control over because of FCC requirements.
Your first question is, we can control how close they are to each other, and that's going to be part of one of the items. And it just has to be reasonable, and it cannot effectively keep out the technology. So we couldn't say 1,000 feet from each other. But there is a reasonableness, and we'll try to hit that on the head. The second portion of that is, as we kind of do this, I think it's going to become imperative, actually, that everybody hears ahead of a whole bunch of testimony that we actually cannot consider, as long the health and safety aspects, and so we want to make sure and be forward and say that early and often, because you don't. Anytime you go to a hearing, you can't. It's hard to unring that bell, and we want to make sure that people know that we can't even consider it. So they can say it, but we're going to have to reiterate that we can't consider that sort of evidence as it comes to you in every hearing. So hopefully that addresses what you're talking about, Ms. Trundy.
It does, thank you.
I'll go to Michael, and then we'll need to kind of put a bow on this for the time being. So Michael, go ahead.
Could we force them to share poles if somebody comes in and can't use, what's available, and they decide to erect their own pole of whatever type, can we force all the subsequent companies to use that pole, or make the first person who was there to share it? I mean, is that even possible?
The answer on that one is it depends on whether it's in the public right-of-way or not. We control the public right-of-way, and so if they put up a private pole on private property, you know, that's more whatever contractual agreements that we wouldn't have, you know, we wouldn't be privy to. If it's in the public right-of-way, we can work to try to do that, yes.
Councilor Parker, you want to?
Two quick ones. First of all, to emphasize, if anybody's going to be cutting up any of our streets, I want it returned to 100% the same way it was. We haven't always had that with utilities. Secondly,
Or better.
Secondly, Joe, is it clear cut? Is it a binary thing, yes or no, on whether we have any control over things that happen on private property? Can we control the aesthetics? I don't know, what else can we control? But when it goes to a private property, are we able to have any influence on that at all, or is our authority limited to the right of way?
No, it's we have control, so yes, but in this realm, we have less control than probably you guys would like, because they associate a cost with the aesthetics, and that cost can't be so exorbitant that it basically impedes their progress.
All right, great. I think this is a great first conversation. If you have, as you're thinking about this and whatnot between now and it sounds like we're going to probably have one or two of these group meetings here regarding this. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yes. We're going to try to follow this up with additional meetings as we get closer to crafting the code language.
All right, perfect. If you've got other ideas or thoughts on the matter, please, either get those into Ryan and John or Ryan and me, and we'll keep this conversation going because it is moving rapidly, and I do think that there's going to be, we need to stay nimble for sure with this as we move forward on it. So I thank you all very much for this. It's good to see everybody, new faces on the Planning Commission, so thank you all. I appreciate all the work that you guys do, guys and gals do for the Planning Commission, so thank you very much, and we will adjourn for now and pick this up at a later date, and council, we're back in 4 or 5 minutes here for our council meeting. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Good night.
Down. We're going to get going here in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for May 20th, 2020. Once again, coming to you via virtual land in Zoom. All of us are in attendance this evening, so we have a quorum. We just finished up a work session, a joint work session with the Planning Commission, and so we're now ready to take care of city business as best as we can. So we'll move first on the agenda is communications this evening. Anything on the communication front, group?
We don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So next on the agenda is the citizen input and community announcements. As the change has been with going via Zoom and online, we asked that everyone submit their questions or comments into our city recorder, Melissa Bissett, so that she can organize those and put them out there accordingly. And Melissa, do we have any citizen input or community announcements right now?
No, we did not receive any.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We'll move into mayor's business. Just a couple of items going on. Just to give everyone an update, I had an email from Phil the other day to let us know that things are looking really promising in terms of applications for our search for city manager. The date on that closes June 1st. And as of right now, we have 35 applicants in the pipeline that they'll be reviewing once it closes, but very promising, and that's good to see. Also, I want to let everyone know regarding the Clackamas County application that they submitted into the governor's office for opening. So that was done yesterday. It was a Board of County Commissioners meeting specifically, I think, to tackle this application piece and review it. And so it has been submitted to the governor's office. My conversation with a couple of county commissioners late last night and short ones today, it looks like the governor and her team will be reviewing them. It's supposed to be Wednesday. Now it looks like it's probably going to be Friday, where they'll review them and make a decision as to when, whether or not we can open as a county and what that date will look like. I have heard through the grapevine that Washington County I've heard different stories, has and has not submitted their application, and that if they have or have not been approved and could be opening June 1st. So it sounds like Clackamas and Washington County are the next ones to apply, and then through some back and forth today, Polk and Marion County have been approved to open after being turned down. So sign of some normalcy perhaps coming in that regard. Just along with that piece, I know it's been kind of a wild week in regards to opening and not. I learned a new phrase the other night with talking with Joe. I believe Joe the phrase was injunctive referral.
No, the preliminary. Are you
talking about Baker County?
The preliminary injunction?
Is it preliminary injunction? Yes. So that created some excitement and caused my phone to blow up for several hours until the Oregon State Supreme Court said not so fast, and that then continued to bring more phone calls and text messages into the mayor and what should I do or what should I not do. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks here as we start to kind of fight for what is a return to normal or what may be a new normalcy, depending on what camp you're in. So I just ask that everyone it's been a long couple of months, and that we just continue to do the right thing, be kind to each other. We don't know the situation that everyone is in and what things might be going on. It's a challenge. We've got businesses that are still struggling. We've got families that are going through changes with everything that's going on. And so we just need to be patient. We're getting there. We've done tremendous work as a city, as a county, and I think as a state compared to many others in terms of what we've done regarding the virus, in terms of curves and flattening and all those other fun new words to our lexicon that we use every day now. So I commend our city for the hard work that's gone into doing our part, and it's not been easy. So the light at the end of the tunnel seems to be getting brighter, and we'll be hopefully in the next week start to see more of what we think of and know as normal. So I thank you for that. C4 met last week, and the big thing was the Metro's Get Moving 2020 initiative, and that's their big transportation bond that Metro is looking at. And so what we're looking at is a pretty sizable Metro bond coming out. We're talking billions potentially being raised for various transportation projects, everything from light rail to road expansions and things like that. And what they're looking at is some help from the federal government, but this could be about a $4 billion package of funding that's being put together. They're looking at, if it passes, what they're looking at from a funding standpoint is a vehicle registration fee within the Metro boundary, and an employee payroll tax for those Metro cities. So if you work in the Metro region, then there would be a payroll tax assessed for the transportation fees. They don't fully know what that percentage on the payroll tax will look like. When I pressed the Metro Councilor Lewis about it, and the consultant that they brought in, they're looking at 0.75% of a payroll tax. So that could be pretty substantial. A big project that is in there that they're really is kind of the keystone to the whole project, or the whole Metro bond, is running a light rail line from downtown to Bridgeport. And so that's probably that's the bulk of the funding for the Metro piece. So stay tuned for more on that. Tolling, if you've not been watching the news, there's been a number of articles. Tolling is kind of getting some greater momentum. We are putting to, I know that Gladstone, West Lynn, and Oregon City have been engaged with a lot of conversation about about tolling and potential overflow for people looking for ulterior motives to get around, or alternate routes, to get around the tolling window on I-205. And those three cities are right there along 205 and could see a lot of impact from that. I've been arguing from day one that Canby should also be included in that, because of 99E being a major thoroughway that would be, people would use to loop around the tolling area. So again, more to come on that, and we'll keep you all posted on that. That's all that I have right now. We'll move into council liaison reports, and we'll start with Councilor Berge.
Nothing at this point. Obviously, we just had a joint session with the Planning Commission, but besides that, we haven't met.
All right. Thank you, sir. Councilor Spoon?
I don't have anything today, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Varwig?
I do not have any reports to share tonight.
Okay. Councilor Hensley?
I don't have a report tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council President Dale?
The only news to share from Canby Utility is we'll be saying goodbye to its operations manager. Jim Stewart has taken a job in another state. Has done a really excellent job for all of us here in Canby, and we will miss him. And of course, they're recruiting. That's it.
Great. Thank you, sir. And finally, Councilor Parker.
I just wanted to thank staff for the bi-monthly management reports. Probably today, for obvious reasons, I had more time to go into each one of them. And they're so thoughtful and detailed. Thank you, Technical Services, that got 20 laptops out to our staff so that they could operate remotely. Eric at the swim center, who goes in every day to make sure that the equipment is working. Sandy in planning, thank you. That was an excellent report. We appreciate your help with the city. And then I did have two questions, Mayor, on your report with the Metro bond. Are we in a situation where Canby, let's take tolling out of this totally, but in terms of the bond, is Canby in a situation where we won't pay for these things in our own taxes, but we will benefit as a region?
Well, that's kind of what the adage, when you're looking at the transportation pieces that are being put in, yes. A number of the projects that are being talked about run just on the others, just across the boundary, right? So Canby's not in Metro.
But we won't pay the tax.
Well, if you work within, if your employer is within Metro, the Metro boundary, then you will be paying that payroll tax.
Which 8,000 of our citizens do.
Right. So a bulk of our citizens, go into the Metro boundary area to work. And most of Clackamas County goes into the Metro area and Metro businesses, and will be paying that tax. So though not directly, Canby's not paying for it, we are indirectly going to be paying for it.
Perfect. That was, even I understood that one, Mayor. And the second one is on tolling.
Yes.
And if you'll indulge me.
Yeah.
Should we have tolling or not is the wrong question. The question is, what should be our regional transportation strategy? Do we want tools that will allow us to control where people drive and at what times and bring in additional resources? Once we all agree on that, then we can go into strategies. I hate it when we immediately jump to a strategy and make that our debate. Tolling is only part of something else. And so it annoys me.
Well, it annoys me as well. And I am in those meetings, and it's less about what's the transportation strategy for our region, right? So there's a lot of conversation. So let's go back to the 1970s when the conversation was that I-205 was the last freeway that we're putting in the state of Oregon. Okay, so that definitely creates a major shift in how you're going to move people in and around your city. So how else are you going to do that? So with the move towards light rail and mass transit system like that, the idea, the first stage was we need to address the spokes, and then we'll work. So that's everything leading from the hub, which is Portland, and then we'll work around the border of and connect in that fashion. So that's a piece of it. And like when I was talking with Commissioner Lewis from Metro, TriMet was involved in the meeting as well, and the conversation with that was, to get people to use light rail, you still have to have the infrastructure on the outskirts of town to be able to bring people to those stations to be able to get on there. Well, when TriMet went through and cut all that service on the farther reaching areas, that's our most underserved areas. How do those people then get in to use it? Well, it's limited bus service, or I've got to find a car or ride share, or I know that you get around town, Mr. Parker, and have been on Powell Boulevard. That's not very bike friendly. So how do you get to those major hubs to get on light rail to get where you're going? So if there's a grand plan, I don't know if I think it's been taken in and out of the oven too many times to know what truly is the final baked product going to look like.
Well, I do want to thank you, Mayor, for hanging in there on this regional transportation thing. I know it has been taking a number of hours over a couple of years, and we're kind of on the periphery. But as you say, almost half of our citizens need this transportation path.
Yeah.
Councillor Berge needs this transportation path in order to get to work every day. So anyway, thanks for going to those meetings so we don't have to.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think when we look at, and I know Canby Area Transit, CAT gets sometimes a bad rap amongst the business community, and in terms of the payroll tax that needs to be paid and whatnot. I will tell you, though, that more and more, a lot of the cities are looking at our model and what we have in CAT and wanting to duplicate it to be able to detach from TriMet, which now literally takes a legislative action to do, to be approved, but because they want to be able to control their own destiny in that regards, and then be able to have better transportation access for their citizenry. So, yeah, there's a lot that's at play here, and it's always, it depends on how the money flows as well, and to which projects get done and to what scope. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and it's never ending, for sure. So, thank you, sir. Sorry, let me get the agenda back out here. Next up is the consent agenda. Any motions for that?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of the minutes of the May 6, 2020 City Council work session and regular meeting, and a new wholesale malt beverage and wine OLCC liquor license for Columbia Distributing.
Second.
Motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Hemsley to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the May 6, 2020 City Council work session and regular meeting, and a new wholesale malt beverage and wine OLCC liquor license for Columbia Distributing. Any further comments or questions on that? All those in favor, raise hands and say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that passes 6-0. Moving in on the agenda now into resolutions and ordinances. It looks like tonight we just have two ordinances for second reading. The first one is ordinance number 1526, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a contract with FCS Group for the completion of an economic opportunities analysis. Amanda, any further? Again, this is the second reading tonight. Our last meeting, we went into pretty good detail on this particular topic about moving forward with this piece. Amanda, is there any other information or background that we should throw out there?
No additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, the analysis will provide community economic development vision and objectives, looking at economic trends analysis for Canby and the surrounding area, site suitability analysis, so basic land demand and what that's going to look like coming up in the future, assessment of potential land sites is, to go coincide with that, and then recommendations from the group that's conducting the study for us. Any thoughts, questions, comments, Councilor Parker?
Yeah, I just, it probably doesn't need to be part of the official contract language or anything like that. But I think a survey, a telephone call down to the individual councilors to give some input into this would be helpful. We've done this with other contracts to help them focus. And I think it might be good for this one because we've got a new economy out there, and I don't want an economic development plan that looks like something for 2019.
Yeah, Councilor Parker, I'd like to be able to add that piece in, or even a work session with the council even would be, I think, beneficial. Amanda, is there, and Joe, are there any provisions in, I don't recall any provisions regarding that in the scope of work that they're doing?
I think I'm remembering that they have a presentation that they go ahead and give as part of this.
Okay.
This was frankly, I'd have to go. I didn't print up or bring the packet from last time in, so the other interesting piece of this was basically that it was done on a grant.
Right.
And I actually, thank you, by the way. I was brought a little appendices that says that there will be stakeholder input as part of this, so that hopefully answers the question.
Perfect. I think that would be great. And yeah, in some way, shape, or form, I definitely think that one of my new favorite words, robust, a robust dialogue. For those of you playing bingo at home, there's a square for you. Yeah, X marks the spot. I think that would be good for us to be able to have with the consultants. So perfect. Any other comments or questions regarding this? Great. I will take a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 1526, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a contract with FCS Group for the completion of an economic opportunities analysis.
Perfect.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Varwig and seconded by Councilor Berge to approve ordinance number 1526, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a contract with FCS Group for the completion of an economic opportunities analysis. So second reading, roll call vote.
Councilor Berge?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Hi.
Councilor Hensley?
Aye.
Council President Dale?
Aye.
Councilor Varwig?
Aye.
Councilor Spoon?
Aye.
All right, that carries 6-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda tonight is ordinance number 1527, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and city administrator to enter into a contract with Herd Farms for wastewater sewage sludge removal and repealing ordinance 1513, also for second reading tonight. So again, this is the follow-up from last week, one of our more interesting topics that we talk about here in the land of the city council is what to do with City Sludge. And we contract with a company to come in and haul it away for us. And so this is our annual renewal of that contract with said company. And they do it willingly and they do a great job. Am I leaving anything out, Joe and Amanda?
No, except that these folks are people who have been with us ever since our sludge dryer didn't work out, and they do it for actually a pretty darn good price, and they do a good job, and we worked well with them for about 8 years now.
The infamous sludge dryer. Let's see, that was, gosh, Councilor Parker, Councilor Dale, Councilor Hensley, was that 8 years ago, we think? That's Councilor Parker's guess?
Yep.
That was our first lawsuit.
Yeah, it was our first big one.
Memories, a trip down memory lane.
Mayor, I would also like to say and thank the farms for being excellent partners with us. There's a lot of things that allow the city to work, and it's actually these farms that allow us to complete the process at an affordable rate. So thank you for being our partners over the years.
For sure, definitely. Any other comments or questions regarding this ordinance in the contract with Herd Farms? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 1527, or an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a contract with Herd Farms for wastewater sewage sludge removal.
And Councilor Hensley, there is an emergency clause on that. Are we amend that to and declare an emergency?
It doesn't say it on the ordinance, but I'll say it, and declaring an emergency.
Still second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Oh, Mr. Varwig. Joe, are we in an emergency piece with this ordinance?
We don't necessarily need an emergency. It would be justified in that safety and welfare is definitely touched when you're talking about solid waste and removing it. So, it's always something to get rid of as quickly as possible. But if you guys don't want to have it on there, it's okay, because it's a contract that we revisit every year.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, it is listed in our notes in the packet under the proposed motion, but I was actually reading from the ordinance, so just to be noted, I don't know if we want to have it on there. I don't know if Melissa needs to change it, because it's not actually on page 197.
I thought when we did the first reading, we removed it. But maybe it's been a couple weeks.
That was actually
familiar to anyone else?
That was actually the other one.
Oh, okay.
But it doesn't have to be on there. The effect of that is, after the second reading, there's a 30-day window if you don't have the emergency clause on it, but we can survive that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't go to effect till July 1st anyway, according to the paperwork.
Correct.
Okay, so we will take it as is on the agenda and not have the emergency clause. Does that work for you, Councilor Hensley and Councilor Varwig, those of you making and seconding the motion?
I'm fine with that.
Works for me.
Okay. So the motion has been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varwig to approve ordinance number 1527, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a contract with Herd Farms for wastewater sewage sludge removal. Roll call vote.
Councilor Berge?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Hensley?
Aye.
Council President Dale?
Aye.
Councilor Varwig?
Aye.
Councilor Spoon?
Aye.
All right, thank you. That motion carries 6-0. The only other items on here was, as Councilor Parker made mention to, is our bi-monthly department reports are in our packet. And for those of you at home who'd like to go into our city website and take a look at what's going on in each of our departments, that would be great. And then next up is second opportunity for citizen input, unless something's come in. Melissa, I think we're good there.
Nothing else, thanks.
Okay. And then, let's see. Amanda, any updates or anything from your end of things?
Just one quick update for everybody. Just want to let you know that by Friday of this week, the public restrooms at our parks will be reopened. due to the people around for the farmer's market, and a lot of people have been cooped up for a long time. It's a holiday weekend. The weather's getting nice. People are out getting exercise. We did decide that it was a good time to open those back up. So you'll see those public restrooms back open. There will still be some signage on the playground equipment that it's not open for use yet, but the restrooms will be.
Great, Amanda. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. I think it's a good call with the weekend or the holiday weekend. So thank you to you and to Public Works team for getting those back open, at least for the holiday weekend, and we'll see how it goes.
Great, thank you.
Only other piece that I forgot to bring up under mayor's business was we are in budget season, and so the city council and the budget committee did meet last Thursday for its first budget committee meeting. Our second one is tomorrow night. So if you have any interest in the finances of the city and what's going on, please feel free to check the website for the first blush of the budget, or tune in and listen to the budget committee meeting tomorrow evening. We'll move into action review. Ms. Bissett.
Okay, you have approved the minutes of May 6th, approved an OLCC liquor license for Columbia Distributing, and approved ordinance number 1526 and 1527.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Moved.
I have a movement. I need a second.
I said so moved before Sean, but I'll second it.
All right. Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varweg, or vice versa, to adjourn our meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm seeing 5 hands and a verbal aye from Councilor Hensley. We are adjourned. Canby, thank you. Good night, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.